What's up, movie fans? Okay, guys, there was some news recently, and this is actually the second time I'm filming this video because the first time, literally this news dropped right after, and I was so mad. Now I'm filming it again because I didn't mention this. When Justice League was originally being made, Zack Snyder, the original director, filmed a lot of the movie, but then he had to step away from the project, and Joss Whedon, the director of the Avengers, came and took over, and then he refilmed the entire thing, basically the entire thing, and that's the cut of Justice League that we got. But now it's been confirmed that next year, 2021, on HBO Max, they are releasing the original cut of Justice League. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, there I mentioned it, now I'm going to get on with the actual video. So yeah, today I wanted to compare the Avengers to Justice League, since they're the big team-up movies of the DCEU and the MCU. I wanted to compare the two of them just to see which one did it better, and I think that most people already know which one I'm going to pick, because most people will already know right from the start what it's gonna be. We're gonna do it anyway. So we're going to go through 5 rounds, like with most of my comparing versus videos. We're going to go through 5 rounds. Round 1, heroes and just main characters. Round 2 will be story. Round 3 will be the villains. Round 4, music. I'm not really an expert on music or anything, but I'm gonna do that. Round 5 will be action. So round 1 is heroes.
Round 1, fight!
I think that heroes in each of these movies are pretty easy to narrow down because they each have 6 main heroes. In the Avengers, it's Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Thor, and Hulk. And in Justice League, it's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg. However, I am actually going to give each movie a pass on one of the characters. Hawkeye in the Avengers and Superman in Justice League. Because in the Avengers, Hawkeye and in Justice League, actually, both of those characters only really show up at around the 3rd act of the movie. For the first 2 acts of the Avengers, Hawkeye is a mind-controlled minion of Loki, and for the first 2 acts of Justice League, Superman is literally dead. I'm not going to be paying attention to either of them when talking about heroes, because neither of them are important to the story until the ending, though they do both have story purposes. Like Superman, they bring him back to life so that they can stop Steppenwolf, and then Hawkeye, his main story purpose is saving him, is literally Black Widow's motivation throughout the entirety of the movie. They both have story influence, and that's about all I really am looking for them, because they don't really have a lot going on besides that. So now, moving on to the other heroes, I think that Avengers manages to really give interesting arcs to 4 out of the 5 heroes that I'm talking about. Iron Man had like a really interesting arc. This arc really wasn't entirely completed until you get to Endgame in the MCU, but he starts the movie and Cap literally says to him at one point that you're not the guy who would make the sacrifice and like save other people by laying down your life. And then by the end of the movie, he does essentially try to do that when he brings the missile into the portal. So yeah, he did make the sacrifice and complete his arc. With Captain America, throughout this movie and Winter Soldier, he's trying to adapt to this new world that he found himself in at the end of Captain America, the First Avenger. Then Bruce, I think, is probably, honestly, and Black Widow actually, Bruce, Hulk, and Black Widow, I think are the two most interesting characters in this movie. And a lot of people are going to disagree on that, but I really believe that. Black Widow, I didn't find interesting at all in Iron Man 2. I didn't care about her in Iron Man 2 before this. But in this movie, she has this interesting backstory that you learn that she's trying to save Clint in this movie, or Hawkeye, because she was saved by him years before when she was a assassin and he was supposed to kill her, but instead he brought her over to S.H.I.E.L.D. Her character arc is to try and redeem herself by saving Hawkeye. I think that that was good. And then with Bruce, I think that it's really, really great how throughout this movie, I don't really know how to explain what I like so much about him, but I just really like what they did with him and how he was, like, S.H.I.E.L.D. reacted to him and everything, and how he was literally Loki's plan in the movie. I thought that it was all done really well. So now let's talk about Justice League. I honestly don't think it really gave character arcs or interesting story to any of its characters, really. At least I can't remember if it did, because if it did, then it was definitely really forgettable. Aquaman, Cyborg, and Flash kind of have something going on, and then Batman and Wonder Woman, they try to give them an arc, but I really think that it failed. I just don't think it did really well. With Avengers, they, like, hammer out each of these characters' character arcs really, really well. I did say that in Avengers, I don't think that they did anything that interesting with Thor. That's the character that I did include when I was talking about all of them. But, like, one hero out of your 5 heroes not really getting an interesting story arc is better than 5 out of your 5 heroes not getting an interesting story arc. I think that this round clearly goes to the Avengers.
You win!
Now we can move on to villain.
Round
In
2,
the Avengers,
fight!
the main villain is Loki, and in Justice League, the main villain is Steppenwolf. I really don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Wolf Dude, that's what we're gonna call him. We're gonna call him Wolf Dude. Loki, a lot of people say that they didn't really find him that interesting in Thor, but every single other movie, including this one, they say that they really, really liked him. I think that Loki is good and, like, an amazing character in every other movie except for this one. The main reason that I really like Loki in Thor the Dark World, Thor Ragnarok, and even for 5 minutes in Avengers Infinity War is because you never really know what he's gonna do. He's the most unpredictable character because he's either gonna do the right thing or he's not. It's as simple as that. He never actually stays on one side. This movie doesn't really have that. Now, the reason that I like him in the first Thor movie is actually because I think they gave him a really interesting setup. Because a lot of people think that he is just a generic bad guy in this movie, but he's not. In reality, his entire motivation in this movie, he is trying to impress Odin. Throughout the entire movie, everything he does is to try and impress his father. The reason that he wants to destroy Jotunheim is because he thinks that that's what his father wants. He doesn't want to be king. In fact, there's a deleted scene that I watched, like a week ago, when he gets news that he's supposed to be king. And I think that they definitely should have kept this in the movie. I don't know why they cut this out. And he looks absolutely just disgusted with the fact that he has to be king. He does not want to be king. he wants to impress Odin. So when he learns that everything he's been doing hadn't impressed Odin at the end of the movie, that's why he lets go and falls into the wormhole and commits suicide, because he realized he was doing everything wrong the entire movie. So he's actually a really interesting villain in Thor, and a lot of people don't recognize that. And in Avengers, I actually really don't like him in this movie. After I realized that, I ended up not really liking him in this movie, because they take that all away. He's just a generic bad guy in this movie. He is at least an entertaining villain to watch. He is at least memorable, and I think that he was a really fun villain. And the reason I bring that up is because Steppenwolf is like 100 times worse than him for that reason. Because he is not memorable, he's not interesting, he has no real good story arc or anything. He is one of the biggest generic bad guys I've ever seen. He has no backstory, he just has nothing. He is the most boring, underdeveloped villain. Not to mention, the CGI on him looks terrible. This is from one of the Screen Rant pitch meeting videos from Ryan George, but I think they explained what he looks like perfectly. He looks like the back of Professor Quirrell's head in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. It's very true. When Voldemort's on the back of Professor Quirrell's head, that's literally what he looks like. They just did everything about him wrong. He is a terrible villain, and he's way worse than Loki. So I find it hilarious how literally all Justice League needed to do in this category was be good. And they couldn't even do that. And that's about where they go from here for the rest of this video. So let's move on to round 3, story.
Round 3, fight!
The story of both of these movies is actually kind of similar. The main bad guy comes to Earth a pawn to a bigger, more evil bad guy. I know that the way that I'm explaining this sounds like I'm a 5-year-old, but he's trying to get like this MacGuffin that in both movies happens to be box shape, which is kind of funny, so that he can bring in an alien army to try and take over the world. 6 heroes have to all unite or assemble, whichever one, to try and stop him. I know that was the most basic way of explaining it, but they both have similar plots. Just trust me on it, okay? However, I think that how Justice League executes that plot is honestly really, really stupid. And the Avengers actually does a really good job at executing it. In Justice League, the heroes kind of just come together because they have to. I mean, they all have a different motivation for being there, but in the end, that's kind of the same thing with the Avengers, that at the beginning of the movie, they all had a different motivation for being there, and because of that, they didn't really like each other. They were just there for their own self-interests, and so they didn't work well together. But in Justice League, there's never that moment where they suddenly click and just become a good team. Avengers does have that, though, because it is smart. It subtly throughout the movie, it's building up to this. Each Avenger develops a relationship with one character. Each Avenger becomes really good friends with this one character, and he is the most likable character in the movie. Phil Coulson. He is the one character throughout the movie that all of the Avengers like. So, what do? Towards the end of the second act, they kill him off. That is just so brilliant, because suddenly the Avengers have someone to avenge, someone that they were all good friends with, somebody that they all cared about, died because they couldn't work well together, and so they are suddenly a team because they want to avenge Phil Coulson. That was smart. Justice League has nothing like that. In the end, they both have similar stories, but Avengers is way smarter in the way that it puts it together. So this one was easily the Avengers. So
win.
now we're moving on to action. Also visuals in
Round
general.
4,
I'm going to breeze through this round quick because I don't have a lot to say here. With the Avengers, it has a lot of great action sequences. I think that a lot of the action is really solid. I especially love the final battle. I thought that all of the action was memorable. I still, to this day, just love all of the action in this movie. With Justice League, the only memorable action sequences are the ones with Flash. First off, when he's running and Superman, turns to see him, I thought that was a really, really cool scene. I also just like the Superman fight in general. That's also a good action sequence. I also love the scene where Wonder Woman drops her sword and Flash runs on the wall and pushes it back into her hand. I love that. And then, of course, there's that scene where Batman's in his apartment and throws the Batarang. I loved all of that. There's no other memorable action. Each character in the Avengers had a cool, memorable scene where they had, this cool action going on. With Justice League, there's just, those three with the Flash and nothing else. And then, as for visuals, because that's another thing I'm judging on this round, Avengers isn't anything special, but it's better than Justice League, because with Justice League, it's just terrible with visuals. First off, Steppenwolf, we've already covered this, but he looks terrible. Another thing I found really odd is this is something where you can just see Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon's differences, because Zack Snyder is clearly wanted to make a lot more of a darker movie, so he had all these dark costumes, but because Joss Whedon made the backgrounds and everything look so light, it's jarring when you look at the Justice League's costumes and then the lighter, atmosphere. It doesn't look right. It just doesn't. So overall, I think that the Avengers has great action and good visuals, and then Justice League has forgettable action and terrible visuals, just terrible. So Avengers wins again.
You win.
Avengers has literally won every round so far. Now the question remains, can it win one round? Is Justice League better than the Avengers in any category? Music. Yeah, I this is what the final round is. I couldn't think of any final round, so I just went with, hey, music. That's something that movies have. I'm not an expert on music or anything. I don't really care. When I'm watching movies, music isn't something that I really consider when I'm reviewing them or anything, but I'm going to compare them here. With Avengers, we all can remember the main theme of this movie. The Avengers theme, I'm not crazy, am I? And I can just immediately think of that theme and play it in my head. Just, it's so easy to remember and just so amazing. Well, with Justice League, I can't even remember what the main theme was in this movie. In fact, I don't think I can remember any themes in this movie apart from, two And both of those two, there are two really good pieces of music in this movie that are memorable, and yet both of them didn't even come from this movie. They are Wonder Woman's theme, which came from Batman v Superman, and Batman's theme where he's driving the Batmobile through that city to get to Steppenwolf. That theme's memorable, and that's from the original Tim Burton Batman movie. With the Avengers, it has a lot of different memorable themes like that Avengers theme that come from this movie. While with Justice League, all the most memorable pieces of music are from different movies. So, Avengers wins once again.
You win.
Avengers wins 5 rounds and Justice League didn't win any.
You win.
Yeah, Justice League is that bad. So yeah, I'm excited for the Snyder Cut of Justice League to come out, because hopefully that'll actually be good, because as you can see, the actual movie that we got wasn't, and Avengers is amazing. Justice League, when I first saw Justice League, I thought, hey, this isn't that bad, but the more I thought about it and the more I rewatched it, I realized, holy crap, this is terrible. So I just wanted to compare it to Avengers to see what went wrong. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, like the video and subscribe, and that's about it. So see ya, movie fans.